Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Frank Short, and I'll be hosting today's session. This is a dedicated session for those starting with 2020 Fusion version 5. So the first thing is we're going to look at the initial setup of 2020 Fusion. Again, some of you have installed the program, and that's good. You'll be able to look back on this and change some of the settings within the Fusion, within the system. It's primarily just for ease of use and speed of use and things like that. So these are some of the preferences that I like to change when I'm installing a new customer's system. Okay. The next thing we look at is simple placing walls, doors, and windows. That is quite straightforward. The next thing we look at is style details, so setting up favorites. The whole thing I found with Fusion, using it through the years, if you set it up properly, designing is a piece of cake. If you spend a little bit of work at the initial part of setup, it will make Fusion run faster for you. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a few minutes. The next thing is we just have a look at navigating the Fusion interface. So basically how it looks, how you can set it up to your requirements, move things around the screen. So when we talk about the interface, really most of programs nowadays are looking more and more like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all that sort of ribbon Windows interface. So with Fusion version 5, you can customize that to suit yourself. Okay, and again, I'll show you how to do that quite quickly. So next stage is we're going to obviously place some units. Now, whether this is a kitchen, a bedroom, or bathroom is quite irrelevant. It's the same process no matter what room you're designing. Okay. Next thing is, and this is probably again one of the most important things within Fusion, is that if you set up your groups at the initial stage of using Fusion, designing again will become faster and faster and faster. The customers that I have that are very fast at designing have set a lot of these things up. So when we talk about grouped items, we talk about blocks of units of items. So for an example, in a kitchen, you might have an American fridge, freezer, housing. With that, you've got a top box, the American fridge, freezer, and two tall gables. So with Fusion, you can save that as one item, okay, and then bring it into every new design that you do. So instead of having to bring in 4 items or more, you can just click on a button and it will bring in all of those in one fell swoop, okay? So that's very important, but again, we'll go into a bit more detail on that. The next option would be just taking views, so perspectives, elevations, top views, and how we navigate around the room that we've designed. And after that, we will look at a panoramic 360. So when you've designed a room, whether it's kitchen, bedroom, or bathroom, we can then create a 360 panoramic, which means you can move around your design. It's very easy to do. It will take less than a minute, hopefully. And what will happen then is you'll get a link sent back to you. So a lot of these are interconnected in that the 360 panoramic, this needs to be set up at the very top. So the manage the dealer email address needs to be set up. Otherwise, the panoramic will not work. Okay. So we'll go through that again, and you'll see what I mean by that. We'll then have a look at the 2020 community website, where you can go on and you can ask questions, or you can look at questions that people have posed to our support line, and you can see some answers in there yourself. So it is quite helpful, and you can see some of the results that some of our customers have produced and put up on the website. Okay, and also it provides information on catalog updates, etc., etc. So we look at that briefly as well at the end. And then at the very end, we just have a few minutes of questions. If there's any questions that you pose to Ollie and he feels that I might be able to answer, we'll go through those online so that you can see the thinking behind the post. Okay. Right, so what I'd like to do now is just jump into the initial setup of Fusion. Now, when you get Fusion installed on your machine, it's got a certain amount of features or preferences built into it. And I like to take these preferences and tweak them and make them a little bit faster and a little bit better to use. So the first thing is here, it's called the initial setup of 2020 Fusion. And there's 2 things in here I'd like to set up. One is compulsory fields. Now, all this means is that when you put in a customer's name, address, telephone number, there are certain fields within the customer's details that are compulsory, i.e. you have to put in a postcode or you have to put in address 1. Now, when I'm designing, or when a lot of my customers are designing, they don't like to be able to fill in, they don't have to fill in that information. So they'd like to have that turned off. So we're just going to show you how to turn that off so that when you start a brand new design, basically all you'll have to do is put in customer's name and start designing. Okay. The second thing is the system dealer email. Now, this is important for the 360 panoramic. If the dealer email is not set up, i.e. your email, so whatever email you have there, you need to put into the system so that when the panoramic is created, it will email you back the link to that panoramic. Okay. So I'll just jump in and we'll bring in Fusion so you can see it here. So I'm going to drop it in here and hopefully everybody can see my screen. So this is the first screen when you jump into 2020 Fusion version 5. Before this, as you double click on your Fusion icon, there is obviously a password and a username. Both of them are defaulted at admin, A-D-M-I-N, okay? So on the left-hand side of the screen here, you've got a couple of different things. You've got the first thing is called Manage, okay? If I click onto the Manage button, in here I've got a few different tabs, a few different buttons. The first one that I'm going to change here is the customer, yeah? So in there you've got customer. If I left click on it, I can then click on to compulsory field. And in here you'll see on your systems, what you'll find is you'll find that there's a yes in there and there's a yes in here. Okay? So what I want you to do is when you're on your machines, just double click on there and take off the compulsory field, because it's a small thing, but it can be quite annoying when you have to fill it out every time. The second thing that we need to change here is just the dealer details. Okay, so if I click onto the system details, over on the right, you'll see a thing called dealer details. So when you click onto that, in there, it will bring up your dealer details, obviously. So it's going to be company's name. So we'll just say Frank's Kitchen. Yeah. And in there, you've got phone number, fax, etc. You don't have to fill out all of that. The only thing that you really need to fill out is this email address here. So that's going to be your email address. Okay. And once that's set up, it'll save it and it'll keep it up to date until you go back and change. Is that okay? Right? So the next thing I'm going to jump back into my PowerPoint for a second. Right. So that's the initial setup. So once you do that, we can just close out of Fusion, go back in, and it should be all set up. The next thing is quite important as well. Now, initially when you set up your free trial of Fusion, what we've provided on your system is universal kitchens and all of the universal catalogs that are available within the system. So on my system, I'll have more catalogs from different manufacturers, CWS, etc., etc. So what you can do here is you can customize the catalog groups so that you can have kitchen-related catalogs in one group, you can have bedroom-related catalogs and bathroom-related catalogs in other groups. So it's just a quick way of organizing what you want or what you want to see when you start up a new design. So I'll jump back quickly into Fusion again, and if I go back in here on the left-hand side, so we're still on the left-hand side of the screen, and in there you've got a thing called Manage Catalogs. If I click onto that, on my system I've got a lot more catalogs, but on yours you'll have mostly universal and some extra bits and pieces. But on the right-hand side of the screen, there's an option called Manage Catalog Groups. Okay. Now in there, when you click on it, these are the groups that I've set up in the past. So I've got a universal kitchen, I've got a bathroom, a bedroom, and certain other groups. When you're creating your own group, what I would recommend that you do is obviously start a new group, and we'll just call this kitchen. But what I tend to do is just a little trick I've learned is that I put a space in between. So use the space bar on your keyboard, and we can call this one kitchen. Okay. The reason behind that is that when I click OK now, it'll have it on the top of the list generally. If I don't have that, it might be sitting down under here somewhere. Okay. So it's handy to have that one sort of visually right in front of you. And especially when you start a brand new design, it will ask you what group of catalog you want to use. Now, as you notice on the kitchen catalog here, it doesn't have anything in my chosen catalog. So what you need to do is on the left-hand side is the number one catalog really is to use advanced graphics. That's for your walls, doors, windows, etc. If you don't have that, you're going to have problems putting in those components. And the next thing you might want to do is put in universal kitchen. So if it was a bathroom or whatever, you select what catalogs, and as you can see on the right-hand side here, these are the catalogs that are going to import into your design. Okay. So some of the other things I would add in would be universal lighting, and any of the other ones that you think maybe Fusion tiles that should be coming standard on your system again. So all those bits and pieces, you can decide which ones to have in and which ones to not have in. Okay, and the same with the bathroom. So you can click on the bathroom and you can select different bathrooms. So it's very handy to get that set up initially as well, and it just means that it's there forever in the day until you change. Okay, so I'll just click OK on that, and I'll just jump quickly back into my PowerPoint. So that's managing groups, and we will eventually get to design a kitchen at some stage today. So let me just jump on to the next one, and this is the options or the user preferences. Again, these are all personal choices that I would make setting up a system, but again, they're little things that would actually make a difference. Okay, and where we find that is on the very front screen of Fusion again. So there's things in here called planning default. So you'll see in here, or you might see in here, wall thickness. There's, as default, the system will put 100 mil thickness walls in there. I always change that to 200 mil because it shows you the reveal on the window and it just looks a little bit better. So it's not going to affect the actual design, but it will affect the appearance of it. Okay. Render settings, unit group settings, and we've already done the dealer email. So let me just jump into that. I'll show you where that is. Again, you won't do any damage to it, so you can have a look at what's in there. And it's at the very top of the screen here under File. So I'm going to go to File and then down to Options on the left-hand side. Okay. Right, so in there, click onto Options, and it will bring in several hundred options. Okay, so we'll just jump through a few of them just to explain them. The very first one is Auto Features. So when you've designed the kitchen, it will you will then ask it to put on molding, so cornice, pelmet, plinth, and wood. So over here, I would tend to turn off the auto side panel and just keep it as simple, just the pelmet, cornice, plinth, etc. The next thing that I might change is if I just go into my general button in here. Sorry, I'm going to go and change that again. So into planning defaults. In here on the right, there's a wall thickness of 200. Now I've set this up for 200, but on your default systems it will be 100. The next thing I would change is the render settings. So in here under render settings, you've got a perspective, an elevation, a plan, and all these other components. So in perspective, I would change it to preview, so that it just means that when you start a brand new design and you take a render, it would come up in a preview or a quick render, rather than bringing it up in wireframe or fight fill, which then you'll have to change the settings. I like to have it coming up straight away in preview. Okay. You can also put in a background as well. So you can put in a background, so there's a garden, clouds, sky, a city with church, or church tower, a city in winter, or whatever kind of background you want. And this will put a background around the room for you. So we'll just maybe mountain landscape. Okay. And then the other option that I would change as well is this thing called unit groups. So we talked about groups initially. The only setting I have in here is I have a use new room style information. Normally it's going to prompt you for style, but the way I would envisage people using the unit groups is that if they've saved it, they've saved maybe an island and they want to bring it back into a brand new design, by selecting the new room style information, it will pick up whatever style you've chosen for that room. So it sort of makes sense just to pick up the style that's there. They're the only things that I would change. There's other things in here under general, so there's things that we can change the color of the interface and all these types of things. But I would leave it fairly much standard at this stage. Click OK. Some of the changes might not take immediate effect. You just need to close out of Fusion and go back in, and those changes will take. Right. Now we'll eventually get to some design. So the next page is replacing walls, doors, and windows. Okay. So as you can see on the screen, it's very straightforward, very simple. You've got square, L-shaped, 3 walls, multiple walls, single and multiple walls down the bottom. I'll jump back into Fusion and we'll just get started. I have a fairly simple design, but I'd like to explain a few things to you before we start that. So what I'm going to do is just jump into Fusion, and on my File button, I'm going to start a brand new customer. So you've got a couple of tabs up at the top that are actually visible or clear. Yeah? So you've got Find Customer. This is where you can find existing customers. It's quite a handy tool. So in here under Search, we can just type in a name, and it will filter out all of the designs that we've used. So the search button is very good, and it will search across all of these fields. So if I am looking for, say, Castle Kitchens, I can type in Castle, and it will filter that, and it will find that Castle Kitchen. It's a really powerful tool, very handy. I'm going to close out of that. If you do want to, you can start a brand new design here, or if you're in here, you can click on a brand new design. So this is where you put in your customer's details, so name, address, telephone number, postcode. You'll see here on the screen that all of these are the same color. If you haven't turned off the compulsory fields like we did at the very start, these will be black, and it will mean you'll have to fill out one of them. Okay, so that's what I mean at the very start. That if you get the preferences right, all you have to do is type in the name of the. We just put in John Wayne, maybe. Okay, so name of the customer, address, telephone number, as much information as you want. The most important part in here, obviously, is the customer's name. The second most important is the email address. Okay, so if you do not put in an email address here, you won't be able to create your Panoramic 360. Okay, so if you go to do your Panoramic and it doesn't show up, it will tell you customer's email, etc. Now you can go back in and edit this and put in the email address, but why not do it at the start? Most of my customers that are using this do not put in the customer's email there. They'll put in their own email address, so that when the Panoramic is created, it will send it back to the dealer so that they can look at it first. If they're happy with it at that stage, then they can forward that on to the customer who can look at it. The second thing is about that is that sometimes you might not want to give the customer the Panoramic on his own. He might go off and find somebody else to supply his kitchen or bathroom. So it's no harm on producing it first, sending it back to yourself. I'll send this back to my other email address, and just type in the email and click OK. As you see, I don't have to put in name and address. I'm just straight into my customer design. Right. So at the top, I've filled in the information, and on the bottom left-hand side, you'll see that the new button pops up. So in other words, I've put in the information required to create a customer. Now I can click onto a new design, and I can type in the name. So it could be kitchen option 1, whatever information you want to put in. Okay. So you click OK, and the first thing that pops up, again, this goes back to us setting up things initially. You'll see here, these are our unit, our catalog groups. So this is a universal one. There's the other one I just set up there as well. So it just means that it's clear. All you have to do is click OK, and you're straight into your design again. Okay. Now, at this stage, we've got simple floor plan layout. So you've got a square, L-shaped, 3 walls, 2 parallel walls, single walls. This is the one I would use most of the time, so multiple walls. Again, how many kitchens, how many rooms are square? There's always something a little bit different about a room. So if you have a square room, well, great. You can just put in dimension A, dimension B, and you're starting your design straight away. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a little bit more detail in my design. There's no point in producing a basic room layout. So we'll go down to multiple walls. Again, I probably mentioned it at the start, but I'll just reiterate it again. When you're producing a room, you can, if you want to, go and put in an L-shaped room or a 3-walled room. But our recommendation is that you put in a complete room, a closed-off room, so you've got all of the walls in your design, right? Primarily for 2 reasons. One, for visual, so that when you're creating a panoramic, you don't see big holes in the wall, or you don't see the garden outside the back wall or whatever. So it's just for visual purposes. But I think more importantly is when you're designing a room, and if you've got all of the room layout, you can see if you've made a mistake. So if the dimension is off, or a dimension is wrong, or an angle is wrong, you'll actually see where you've gone wrong. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to produce a fairly simple layout, just so you see how it operates. Before I start it, just 2 things I want to tell you. When you're producing a room layout, you need to go in a clockwise motion. If you're putting in a room and you go in an anti-clockwise motion, there will be problems left, right, center. So when you're going putting in your room, go clockwise. Secondly, if you have an angle in a room, okay, and you don't know the angle, if you have an angled wall in the room and you don't have the angle, the exact angle, it's very hard for you to put in the wall, okay? So if you do have an angled wall, I would suggest leaving that wall to the very end of your design. Now I'll show you here as we're going through it. If we click on the up arrow, I'm going to put in my first dimension. So my first dimension is 4,350 millimeters. And all I have to do is click onto enter or click onto add wall, and it puts in the first wall. Now, as before, I suggested do not put it in anti-clockwise. So this is going anti-clockwise, okay? So don't do it that. If you do that, you'll have the room inside out. So I'm going to go clockwise, yeah? And I'll put in the next dimension of 3870, hit enter, and it puts in the next dimension. I'm going to come down 3 meters, and all I'm doing is clicking on the direction I want to go and typing in the dimension I need. So I click onto the down right-hand arrow, and I'm going to put in the next wall at 45 degrees because I know this wall is 45, and I'll put in 1,000, okay? Now, some of you might be asking, well, what happens to doors and windows, etc.? When you're putting in your room, it's just all of the walls at one go. We'll drop in the doors and windows later on. Okay. Next dimension I want to put in maybe is a meter. Click OK, and it'll drop it in a meter. Okay, so I'm going to come back over here 3 meters. And the last wall that I'm going to put in is an angled wall, but I don't know what the angle is. I might know the length, but I don't know what the angle is. But there's a great button down here called Complete. You can click on Complete, and it will complete the room for you. Okay, so it figures out what the angle is itself, which is a great tool. Okay, so if just to go back, if there's an angle in the room, make sure that's the last one in, and it will do it for you. There's a few other buttons in here, undo and restart. So if you make mistakes, you can just click restart before you go into your design. And there's another button up here called gap, but I never really use it. There is a gap within the door catalog to drop in a doorway, whatever, so we can use that instead, but I tend not to use that on. Click on OK, and what we're doing here is the very first screen that you drop in, so the very first design that you do is what we call a style feature. So I'll just jump back to my PowerPoint, and in here, basically, just to explain the style features is there's two types of style features. There's a style of the room, whether the room has got a white wall and a black floor or a green ceiling or whatever internal doors that could be brown or oak or wood or whatever. And then the second thing is the kitchen type. So when you put in a unit into your kitchen, it'll ask you what style of kitchen you want to create. Now, if you set these favorites up, so as you can see on the screen on the PowerPoint, I've got some favorites set here, cream walls with black floor tiles. So let me just jump into Fusion and explain that to you. So on the right-hand side here, it's got a list, I think it's about 18 different types of color schemes. As you click on them, depending on the quality of your broadband, some of these images might be good or bad, but it will give you a basic view of color layout of the room. So this one here, Classic Cream, has got a cream wall. It looks like it's a wooden floor and white ceilings and white doors and windows. Okay, so all of these are set up as standard. If you want to use them, you can just click onto them and click OK, and you're in your design. But what I want to just show you is that you can set up your own favorites. Now in here, I've set up my own favorites. So cream walls with black floor tile, or almond walls with black tile, or Frank's favorites, whatever information you want to give it. Yeah. So some people have designed their own favorites, and they call it, works well with an oak door, or works well with a cream gloss, or whatever detail you want to put into it that will make sense to you. Yeah. So how do you get this favorite up? There's two things you need to do first. You need to click on Expand Options and go to Room Options. And in here, you've got the theme, sugar almond, and now all of a sudden you've got all of these walls and doors and all the bits and pieces in that room. Okay? It's everything but the units, etc. Now, a lot of people make this mistake where they click on the walls, and all of a sudden they've got almond white. They've got no other option. Okay? So how you get around that is we go back to themes, and the theme I had selected down here was sugar almond, right? So what I need to do is just go back up to none. It will keep all those preferences, but as soon as I go into floor, it will give me a lot more options in here on the right hand side. So as you can scroll up and down, and you can type in something. So if we say, just just type in tile, it will bring up different types of tiles, so floor tiles, and as you click on them, it will give you a view of the tile. Yeah, and you can change that as well. Now, it is a little bit limiting in that whatever texture is there, that's what you've got. You can't change the size of the tile yet. We can show you later on how to do that, but it's just a quick way of getting back into it. Now, the Save as Favorite button is still not highlighted, and I just noticed there that I need to click onto the other option, which is just a little bit further down. So click on the Show Catalog Options, and now all of a sudden the Save as Favorite pops up. Right? So I can click onto that, and I can call it non-win. Okay. Click onto OK, and then now you'll see that favorite is. So that's set up at the very start. You can click onto it, and the next designs you go in again and again and again. You can just click onto your favorite, and as you notice, you'll be in a lot quicker into your design than I did. Okay. So I'm just going to click onto that, and we'll probably just jump into my screen, and we'll just do a quick view. Sorry about this. Reset the zoom. So we'll just jump in here, and we'll have a look at the floor plan. So on the right hand side here, you've got your floor plan. Sorry, now I just need to reschedule this. Right, so I'll just organize this a little bit better. On my screen here now, we've got a couple of different options. So the first thing we jump into is obviously showing my floor plan. We need to put in doors and windows. Okay, so down at the bottom of the screen, we click onto Catalog Items. So in there, you've got a couple of different items. And we just jump quickly back into the PowerPoint again, just to go through those. So that's the saving as a favorite. I'm going to show you that saving a kitchen style. So the kitchen style is if you want to save a style of kitchen with an oak door that's shaker or in frame with a specific handle, a worktop, and all these extra bits and pieces. You can do that. We've just changed that. As soon as we drop in a unit, it will start asking us those questions. But what I wanted to do, first of all, is just to explain the interface to you, okay? So a lot of people will look at this and they go, God, look at all these icons. Which one? What do they do? But firstly, when you move your mouse over an icon, it tells you what it is. So if you get a little bit lost, just move your mouse over something and it'll tell you what it is. So this is a sloped ceiling. These are your grouped items. This one is a reset filter. Again, we'll explain them to you. The way I have my system set up here is I've got my catalog items on the left-hand side. Now, this is a mistake that everybody makes at the very outset. They go into the system and they have catalog items, and they might have my navigate view, and they might have it sitting. Sorry, let me just turn this back on again. Turn off that and remove the navigate. So a lot of people might have the navigate sitting on the left-hand side. So there's a lot of boxes on the left-hand side of the screen. The catalog items are sitting there, and the problem I have with this, especially when I'm working on a laptop, is the screen size becomes very, very small very quickly. So what I like to do here is I like to position these around in the right locations. So the navigate view is where you go and take a view of your room, etc., etc. Now I only want that to appear when I'm taking a view of the room. There's a little feature on it just where it says navigate view or to the right of it, and you can right click on that and just go to auto hide, and you see what it does. It automatically hides it on the left hand side of the screen. Okay, you can also do it with navigate items, so you can go auto hide and you see what happens. It drops to the left hand side of the screen. So in the process, it's making your floor plan a lot bigger. The reason I keep the catalog items fully on the screen is because you're going to use it far more frequently than the navigate view button. Okay. You can, if you want to, you can drag the catalog button anywhere you want. So you can drag it over here, and you can drop it here, and you can move all these buttons all over the screen if you want. Now, that causes a bit of a problem because, as you can see, because it's floating now in the middle of the room, it's covering my floor plan, and I don't want that to happen. Okay? So either the best solution to have it is to have them docked on the left-hand side and have them either auto-hiding or not. Okay? So what I do with that is all I have to do is drag the navigate button, hold down the left button, and I can drag it. And you'll see on the left-hand side here is these little buttons here. So you have to marry the mouse with this little button. What I find a lot of people do is they'll bring it over here and they'll think, yeah, that's dropped in the left-hand side. it's actually not docked in the left-hand side properly. How you dock it is you drag it in, you drop it down here, you bring the mouse and this little box together, and it snaps into position. And you'll see that there's an edge on the navigate view, etc. as well. The catalog box as well, I drag it over. Now you can drop it into different locations, but again, I tend to use left to right, so I would suggest drop it in the left-hand side and drop it in there. Okay. Now again, the screen becomes a lot smaller, the floor plan becomes a lot smaller. So I'm going to right-click on Navigate and go to Auto Hide. Okay. So at least that's the way I would tend to have it set up. It's a little bit more organized, if you like. You can also resize the box, but there is a limitation to this in that if you resize the box, it moves the tabs here, all over the place. So I tend to have it sort of like that, so things are a little bit more organized, a little bit more in line. The next thing I want to just jump onto is the quick access toolbar, and this is this toolbar here up on the top. There's not many icons on it, and there is a little down arrow to the right, and this will show on your system. So on the default system, this quick access toolbar is sitting up on the top left-hand side of the screen. Okay? So what I would prefer to do is to drop it, show it below the ribbon. So this area here is what they call the ribbon. Drop it below the ribbon, and it's dropped in closer to my design. Okay? But I'd also like to put on things onto this ribbon. So there's only a couple of different icons in there. I'm going to, people always do this, and I get calls constantly saying, my catalog items button is gone, my iCloud button is gone, and my navigate button is gone. And all they've done is they've gone in here, they've deleted the X, and they've taken it off the screen. Okay? So the preference here I put on most people's machines so that they don't forget, or if they do, they turn off the boxes, they can turn them back on quite quickly. So up on the top of the screen, we've got File, Home, Insert. You can click onto that, and there's a button in here under Insert called Catalog Items. So if I right-click on any icon that's there, I can click on to Add to Quick Access Toolbar. And you'll see what happens, it drops it in there. Okay? Second thing is the Navigate View button, which is on the View tab at the very top. And I can right-click on top of that and go to Quick Access Toolbar, and it will drop it there. So if I get rid of these boxes on the left, I can just click onto the catalog items, and I can click onto Navigate button, and you see it brings it up. Now I'll still have to go back and turn the auto hide on, but it just is a quick way of getting you back into the system. So again, if that's set up and you turn them off, you can literally just click onto here, and they're back in. Okay? So any icon that you find on the system, you can attach in here. So the recommendation is maybe 10, 15 different icons. So it would be things that you would use on a regular basis. So if you're finding that you're using the zoom button on a regular basis, you can right-click on it and you can add that zoom in there. So it organizes a little bit better. Okay. So that's just the setup of the screen, the Navigate button. Most of your commands are in these tabs here. But I find that when people are set up properly, most of the commands will be sitting on this access toolbar, and you can just click on them and use them at your will. Okay? So let me just jump back in here. We'll see how so we've changed most of those. We just jump down to the next screen, and we're placing the description. So we've eventually got round to actually designing a kitchen, but again, as you can imagine, if you set these things up properly at the start, you'll have far less problems down the line. Okay? So I'm just going to go and drop in a unit. Now, I'm going to quickly explain the cursor within Fusion. It's not massively important. It's coming from an older version of Fusion where a lot of times a keyboard was used rather than the mouse. So what I'd like to do is explain it. So down at the bottom left of the screen, there's a cursor. It's like a red little cursor. You can right-click on the screen and you can position the cursor anywhere you want. So if I was to click onto the cursor in that position, and I double-click on a unit on the left-hand side of my screen to drop in a unit, it'll position the unit where that cursor is. I won't go into any more detail in it at the moment, but I'll explain it when we're doing maybe a group diagram or whatever. So let me start by putting in a base unit. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you've got your manufacturer's product selector, so it's catalog. So this is where your catalog is. And you'll see here the Universal Kitchen catalog pops up. And as you can see, there's a list of the catalogs that I put into that group. So if you did want to go and put in a sync or something extra in there, you can use one of the other catalogs. Okay. So it defaults to the Universal Kitchen catalog, which is good. And on the left-hand side, just below that, we've got different types of sort of search fields, if you like. So the primary type basically search for the primary configuration of your unit. So if you're looking for a tall unit, you go to tall unit down here. Okay. If you're looking for a base unit that's got doors on it as opposed to no drawers, you select base unit, no drawers. Okay. So you've got a primary and a secondary filter, and this is where I think somebody that's starting Fusion will start off with. Instead of typing in codes, we can type in codes here and find items quite quickly. But as you're starting off, you'll not know, or you'll not be used to using codes. So this is where I think you should set yourself up. So if we go to base unit, no drawers, and we're going to drop in maybe a corner unit. So you'll see in here on the secondary filter, it gives you corner units, double door units, multi-units, etc., etc. So you literally drop in the units. So as you're going, we've said corner units here, and on the right left-hand side, you've got a list of different types of units, and you can drag them in. So what I'll do is I'll just drag in a couple. This one here is a blind corner base unit. You drag it into position, and you snap it into location. Again, this jumps back to our style feature. So at the very start, we had options in here, and if you set up the options like we did with the room options, you can say, well, I'm going to say an oak shaker 19mm door within the zero worktop. Yeah. So if you set them up, and it's the same format as before I showed you, so you can set them up quite quickly. I'm just going to click OK and drop this into location. So it drops it into location. It's a blind corner unit, and you can then start placing the other units where you want them. Now, you don't necessarily have to start in the corner, but it tends to help for your designing, so you can go move out of the corner into the rest of the room. What I might do is just show you where the cursor comes into position here. So if I want to put in a dishwasher in here, so there's your base units here, okay? In here, I can move the little the unit name or the tab, and you can just move it around to have a look at what it is. So it's a unit. If you need to look at that unit individually, you can highlight it, just left click on it, and the items button pops up here. There's a little button in there called item properties. Again, I can right click on that and add that to my list. And as I click on it, you see here, it will give you a view of that item. So it's a blind corner unit. We click OK and drop it in. Okay. Now, before this, we talked about placing walls and doors and windows. I've no doors or windows in at all. So we don't necessarily need to go in any particular path, but let's jump back because I've obviously forgotten to put them in. So we go back into doors and we select onto the door icon up at the top. And in here, it will give you different types of doors. So you can scroll down through them and you can find what type of door you're looking for. Okay. So you can see in there, you put in the door, we can drag in a door, drop it in here. There is one thing I noticed with people using the system. Let me just put in the door. So I'm going to change the width, the length of it to 900, and the distance left is 100 mil. And basically, the distance left is this. As you're standing in the room, it's the distance left over there, and it will figure out the rest of the room. There's one thing that people tend to do when they're using the system, and there's a little slider bar over here. You'll notice this slider bar. If I drag that over to the end, it just gives me the codes. And a lot of people don't like that because they like to see what type of doors they are. So if you click on the slider bar, you can see more detail. You can see the units in more detail, yeah, which is quite a handy tool. We've dropped in the door, click onto window, and again, we select on the type of window that we want. We'll drag it in, hold down the left button, and just drop it into the wall and let go. In here, it'll ask you for the length or the width and the distance left or right. So we'll change this to maybe 1200 from the left-hand side. Yeah? And we can also change the height of the window as well. So click onto that, click OK, and if we make a mistake, we can select the window and delete it. So just hit the delete button because it's already selected. There is a button up here that if you make a mistake, you can undo and redo. So the undo and redo is a really, really handy tool. If you make any mistakes, you can go backwards and forwards and try again, basically. If you need to move that, so once that window's in, what I would tend to suggest that you just go undo and say, right, well, let's bring in that window again, and we'll put in the right dimension this time. So it might be 1100 from, might be 1650 wide or 1600 wide, and it might be 1100 from the left-hand side. And again, the height might be 1000. So if you click OK, what happens there? Positions it in the right location, and it will give you the dimensions as well. If you need to move any of the dimensions, you can do, so you can just drag them out, and they'll stay in position. In here, there's another way of finding items. So this button here is quite important, and I will always go back to it on a regular basis just to reset it, so that you can go now and you can say I'm looking for base unit with drawers or a base tall unit or whatever. I might want to put in a dishwasher. Now, I never know where the dishwasher is, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the description field here. Now, on your machines, you might not have description, but if you need to add it in, just click on the little down arrow, and there's a button there called Add Criteria, and you can select description in there. The reason I'm using it is because I know the word dish is in the description. So if I type in dish, it'll now search the catalog for my dishwasher. I can click onto it here and drag it into position. Drag it in and drop it into position, and it'll snap into position. Okay? So it's a case of literally building up your design, adding in the components, etc., etc., etc. I'll just jump out quickly and just show you how you would create a grouped item. Now, again, just one thing before we finish this. If you leave the description dish in there and you go and look for a base unit, it will give you no options on the left-hand side. The reason being is that you've got dish in here. So you're trying to find something with dish in the description that's in base unit. So my preference here is that, our recommendation is always click on that reset filter and get you back to the beginning, and it will allow you to jump into your design. So I'm just going to quickly show you how to build up a unit and call it, save it as a group. So most people should be okay with dropping in units, etc., etc. I'm going to go now, and I'm just going to maybe build up a tall American fridge freezer housing, just so you can see how it's made up. So you put in your components. We're going to select tall unit medium, and I'm going to select an end panel. So I'm going to select tall medium end panel. Again, if you look at any of the items that you have in here, it will give you more variables down the bottom of the screen. You've got a length. If you don't have the right thing, we can click on to add criteria, and we can set height off the floor. So this one here is a tall medium end. It's a tall medium end panel, but the P starts for plinth, so it will sit above the plinth. This one here is a full, as you can see, the bottom is going to 0. So I'm going to drop that one in here. Okay? I'm going to drag a second one in and drop it beside it. Okay? I'm going to then go back up and find maybe a top box or something like that. So if I click onto primary, and notice how I just reset the filter again. Click onto your wall units under 600 high, and we're going to look for, we should have a top box in here somewhere. So click onto top box, and you can scroll down here and find the size. So I might put in maybe a meter, if the meter one is at the very top, drag it in here and just drop it into position. If I don't have the right location, so I can zoom into this, so I just click on the zoom button, it will zoom into it. I might want to move those panels in and out. So the easiest way of doing it is just to lasso the panel and move it up, and you'll see you can move it up. Okay? Lasso the second one, and then just click on the up arrow, and it will move that one right beside. So it takes out the guesswork, so you don't need to guess how much you need to move it by. It will snap it up to that top box as well. Where you would find the appliances, so there's 2 locations for the appliances. One is in here under Advanced Graphics. So if you go to Advanced Graphics, you've got loads of options in there called Accessories, Appliances. So you can use them from there, but make sure you come back out to your Universal Kitchen. Or the other option is to find it in your screen here, and I don't know if we can see it on here, but I'm just going to go to my cloud. I'm just going to bring in my cloud, and I just need to refresh on here and put in a password. But basically, the cloud it's an online database of extra catalogs. So I'll just put in my password, and you get all those details when you log in. When it's connected up to the internet, what it will do is it will open up a browser. It will give you news on certain product ranges, etc. But there's a little browse button in there, so you can click onto that, and then you can select on what type of range you want. So let's say, for example, I think we have a CDA group, or we can go in and select the BSH group or whatever. We'll just leave it on that one, and we'll go fridge freezers. So as you can see, you can filter it down to what you're looking for. I'm going to select a fridge freezer. And in here, there's a list of different types of fridge freezers. I just select the first one, and all I have to do is just drag it into location. Okay. Now, the depth of it might be a little bit off. It just depends what unit you bring in. You notice there, when I bring it in, you can obviously change any of the attributes of it. So if it's not an exact manufacturer's product, you can go in and change that or whatever if you want. Otherwise, you can change the components that are there. So if I click onto that fridge freezer, you'll see that it's in location, and I can move it up in whatever space I want. So it's picking up but there's 98 mil between them. So if I say we'll say 45, it'll more or less put that in the center. Okay. Now what we want to do is, and I'll just do a quick perspective of that so you can see what it is. So if I right click and go to perspective, you've got your navigate button over here on the left hand side. So if I click onto navigate, I can now have a look at that. We'll come back to the navigate in a few minutes. Problem is we've put it up onto the ceiling. So quickly we can just click onto it and change the Z direction down to 0. So that means that it's 0 off the ground, if you like. So I drag that in. It's probably the wrong height, or else you'll see in there that the top box is in there. So we need to make a few changes to this item. What I will do is jump into my elevation, and that will give me an elevation of whatever wall is the default wall. But you'll notice if I go to the navigate button on the left hand side, I can click onto whatever wall I want, and you'll see it will give me an elevation of that unit. Okay. I can then say, well, I'm going to move that top box up, and it should pick up the dimensions where it would snap to. Eventually I do it twice, and now when I take perspective of that, that unit is done. Okay. So that unit is done. We can use it again and again and again. Now, instead of having to put in the panels and the top box or move the fridge freezer wherever you want, what we're going to do with this is create this as a group. Okay. So simply, if I go back into plan, you'll see, and I'm going to zoom into it, and this is where the cursor is quite important on this. If I click onto here, you'll see that the panels there, the top box, etc. What we can do here is if I right click, and again we talked about walls going in a clockwise, everything is clockwise motion if you like, I'm going to attach my cursor to that tall end panel. Okay. Now, you'll see there on the bottom of the left of the screen, it's added the cursor onto the bottom left, but what I'm also want to do is I'm going to move that cursor just 20 mil to this side, so that when I bring it into the next design, it will bring it in perfect. Okay, so that's what's important about putting in the cursor. There's a button up here called annotate, insert, it's already in there, and you'll see that there's cursor icons as well. So I'm going to just move that cursor back 20 mil, it should pick it up, and you'll see in there, it's dropped it in where the tall panel is. If I now select the whole item, so all of the panels, etc., everything in it, up on the top left of the screen, there's an option called group item. Okay? So click onto that, and in there, it'll allow me to call it a group item. So I can call it American fridge freezer, call it American fridge freezer housing, whatever. Yeah. Now, what some people tend to do is that if they've done maybe a traditional or a modern kitchen, and they maybe have tongue and groove panels, they might call it traditional American fridge freezer housing and a modern one, so that it brings in a tongue and groove panel as opposed to a standard panel. Okay. We'll just leave it as American fridge freezer housing. Click OK. Now, if I go back out, I'm just going to zoom out to this again, so we'll go reset zoom, and again, let's go back in here and add that to the quick access toolbar, so I know now that there it's in place. I'm going to delete that whole item, so it's gone out of the equation, and I'm going to go back to my catalog on the left-hand side, and let's say, for example, we put in tall larder, right? So let's say, for example, we're starting a brand new design, and we'll go tall larder, we'll put in the larder units, and this should be here somewhere. Larder units right in front of me. So we'll select one of these larders. It doesn't really matter which one. I just wanted to show you an example of it to get it right. So I'll drop in this larder here. And as you notice, when I drop in the unit, it attaches the cursor automatically to that unit. If I now go to my grouped items, this is where I can save my grouped items. I can click onto here, and I can go, there's my American fridge freezer housing. Double click on it, and you'll notice what happens. It automatically drops it beside the unit that I have just saved. So that when we go back in and take the perspective that everything is set up, it's all done and dusted, we don't need to worry about it. So there's your tall larder unit, and you've also got the full group unit beside it. So if you get that right at the outset, it's very quick, it's very easy to use. Okay? I'm not going to finish this design because I've been talking for nearly an hour. I should have done this a lot quicker, but anyway. What you would do at this stage is put in your sink and hob and all the bits and pieces. And the last thing you would tend to put in is your auto features, which is your cornice, your cabinet, all that type of thing. There's a button there called auto features, and if you right click on it, you can click onto auto features and add it to the quick access toolbar, so it's there. All you have to do with that now is click on it, and it will bring in the options for cabinet, cornice, print, worktop, etc. Whatever ones I select, so we select this one here and whatever worktop, click OK. It will automatically put worktop on all of the units. Now, we haven't completed this design, but you'll notice here that whatever units have got worktop attached to it, it will allow us to make changes to those worktops. So I'm going to open up a design that's done Blue Peter style in a minute. But if I drag this worktop here, I can extend the worktop out. And on the top left of the screen, you've got other features that you can do to it. So if you want to curve the end of it, the corner of it, you can click on the corner, and up on the top you can type in, it's coming in at 300 bytes. So you can do a lot of work with that at that stage, editing the worktop, etc. I'm going to close out of this, and hopefully I have a design somewhere else on my system. So we'll pick up this one here. So click onto this one here. This is a design we've done already. Once we take a view of it, so there's a floor plan done. Now, I did mention that you should close off the room. If we don't, and I'm going to create a quick panoramic here, we're going to take perspective and just talk about the perspective for a few seconds. I tend to right-click in the middle of the floor just to get my perspective. You can use these icons up here. So up on the top, you've got a perspective button. You click on it, and it will give you a perspective. And just to jump into the navigate side of things, so this is going to render that it's in my preview mode, and you'll see it popping up on screen. Okay. I've added in these extra bits. So you see there's a wall clock, and there's a bowl, and there's a book, etc. So if you find these within the system, and they're all within Fusion, you can save them as a unit group again, and just bring them in one fell swoop. Same with the other items. So if I click onto that one, we just take on a perspective, and on the left hand side you've got your navigate view. If you want to take a view of it, you've got two ways of viewing it. So the first way is from and to. So I tend to use this one. So if we left click where we want to view and right click where we want to stand, it will take the view of the room, and I just change that back to preview, and again it will go off and render it for me. If you find that your machine is a bit slow, the render is quite slow on it, there is an option up on the very top where you've got the tab view section here. There's a thing called planning mode. So what it's done is it's rendering off the design for me. If I click onto planning mode, it will turn that into sort of a very quick render. So it'll allow me to jump from left to right. So it's quickly set myself up whatever view I want to take. So if I left click and right click, I can take it in there. I can then set up my preview, and then I can turn off the planning mode, and it will render that back in full second. Okay. If you want to create a panoramic at this stage, all we have to do is click onto the down arrow beside perspective. Again, you'll have got different options in here, but in there you've got 360 panoramic. What a lot of people do is they'll just access that and they'll drop it on there. So if I click onto 360, if I haven't got a customer email, this is what it's telling me. So I don't have a customer email in there. So what you have to do is just jump quickly back out of the design. So, and in here, up on the top, you'll see I don't have an email address. So if I just click onto the edit button, I can type in my email address, jump back into my design, and take another view. So if I take another view, perspective, we've taken our perspective, and now we should be able to just quickly jump on to Panoramic 360. So the Panoramic 360 is taken from where you're standing in the room. Okay? So if you stand further back, you can pan around the room, but generally the recommendation is to take a view in the middle of the room. It doesn't matter if you're looking down on items, but Panoramic will allow you to change. If you click onto Panoramic, what it will do is it will go off and it will create a panorama. Okay, so eventually I'll get an email. Now this could take a minute or so. What I'm going to do is jump just quickly into some panoramas that customers of mine have created. This is probably what I should have created earlier on. This is the panoramic that you'll get, and basically the way it works is if you hold down the left button, you can pan around your design. So I can pan around here, and you'll see because the room is closed, you don't see the sky outside here. And you'll see you can just pan around the room. If you need to zoom in, something you can just use the scroll bar on the mouse, or you can use the zoom in and zoom out button here on the left hand. Now, if you put this onto your phone, and your phone is quite relatively modern and it's got a gyroscopic option on it, there's a little button that will appear here on your phone. It's like a glass. If you click on it, it will turn it into panoramic or VR a view. And if you use the headset that you can get, what you get with 2020 Fusion, or you can buy them in any shop, they're quite cheap, maybe £20, etc. Put them onto the headset, and you'll actually get a full 3D view where if you move your head, moves the direction of your view. Okay. that was one of the views. I've got a few more. We'll just jump in. Yeah, I think I've got a few. Yeah, there's a few up here. So there's another panoramic. Again, with your island, all I'm doing is just panning left. Yeah. I think I did that one. This one was done by a bathroom company. And again, you'll see if I just pan left and right, it'll show me different parts of the room. There is a circular button here that allows you just to slowly pan around the room. Quite good. That makes you dizzy. Some of the other ones that are there, this is another customer that creates it. So that's how the panoramic is created. It's very straightforward. It probably looks like I've got a panoramic sent to me somewhere here. So if I go back into my views and back up here, you'll see that it's created the panoramic of that kitchen. So this is what you'll get back, and all you have to do is click on that link, whether it's on your phone or on your computer or your iPad. Just click on the link, and it will open up the link into a service, and that means that you can pan around your design. Yeah. So it's quite straightforward. You'll notice there, because there was no wall on the back, it's showing me blank screen. It is preferable to have full design done, and if you want to, you can obviously zoom in to certain parts. Okay. So hopefully that has gone through it in as much detail as I can initially. That's just placing the units. We've done through that. Placing the grouped items, so that's quite important as well. Perspectives, elevations, top views. So the one thing I didn't touch on was, so obviously it'll tell me when I've created my panoramic. If I want to create an elevation, I can click onto the elevation button here. And on the left-hand side, where we've got your navigate view, you can select whatever wall you want to create the elevation of. So that will create the elevation there and there. You've also got your perspective, but there's a new button in there called top view or bird's eye view. So if you click on the bird's eye, it will give you a top view looking down on your design. The things I probably didn't mention are the view from height on the left-hand side here. So if I go back to a default button, and there is a nice feature in it here where it goes back to your default view, you'll notice there on the left-hand side of the screen, I've got my position. So this is where I'm positioned. Again, I can right-click to reposition myself and left-click to change the direction. But if I leave it like that, I can change the view height here. Okay? So I can change that to 1800. And what it does, it changes the height that I'm looking at the kitchen. So it changes into 6 foot, whatever. And then the view 2 height is kept at 13.7. So it allows me to look down into a particular design. So if I right click and left click, you'll see I'm looking at a height of 1800 and it's allowing me to view down into the screen. Thank you, guys. You know, if you have any questions or whatever, just get in touch with either the sales line or call support line if you've downloaded the version. Thank you.